Our gospel reading for this morning comes from the 21st chapter of Luke. The gospel reading in the first Sunday of Advent in the lectionary is always from the end of Jesus' ministry as he speaks of a day to come. In this particular passage, Jesus is in Jerusalem in Holy Week, just days before his arrest. He has been teaching in the temple and has, on someone's remark about the temple, told his followers that the temple will soon be destroyed. Following questions about when, Jesus has deflected those and has gone on to speak of days to come, and we join the reading a little while later when it seems that the conversation has shifted from what about the temple to an even further off future. Listen for what the Spirit may speak to us through these words. There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on earth distress among nations, confused by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, when these things begin to take place, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Then he told them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. As soon as they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Be on guard, so that your hearts are not weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of this life, and that day catch you unexpectedly like a trap. For it will come upon all who live on the face of the whole earth. Be alert at all times, praying that you may have the strength to escape all these things that will take place, and to stand before the Son of Man. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. What are the things that weigh heavily on you, that cause you to lose sleep at night? I've read a number of articles lately about how Americans are increasingly worried about a terror attack. And we certainly can see those fears being channeled toward Muslims in our day. But perhaps your fears are more immediate, financial ones. Certainly the economy is better than it was some years ago, but not for everyone. And in a region whose economy is so dependent on the federal government, and when we have such a dysfunctional Congress, who knows when the next sequester or budget crisis might arrive. Perhaps you're concerned about getting into the college of your choice, or about graduating, or about finding a good job when you do. What happens if you don't get in? What happens if that job doesn't pan out, or what happens if it doesn't pay enough to live on? Or maybe you're worried about something completely different: health, relationships, retirement, the environment, global warming. There's all sorts of possibilities of things to weigh on us and feel like we're carrying burdens. But Christmas is coming, a time that will fill us with joy and good cheer. Bathed in Christmas lights and feasting on a steady diet of Christmas music and broadcast of It's a Wonderful Life, A Charlie Brown Christmas, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, we can enjoy a welcome respite from all our worries and concerns. It probably works for some folks, but not for everyone. In fact, for some people, Christmas actually just adds to the stress. When I lived in Columbus, Ohio, I volunteered and was on the board of a nonprofit that worked to help people dealing with serious mental illnesses lead more productive lives. It was staffed and run by people who themselves dealt with mental illness, and one of those people was a member of the church I served, which is how I got connected with them. Many years as Christmas time started to roll around, the good folks at Partners in Active Living would ask me to do a presentation on faith, mental health, and the holidays. For a lot of the people who were clients at Partners, they lived on very limited incomes, and the season's focus on gift giving and buying was often simply a painful reminder of that. For those who were dealing with depression, the idea that they were supposed to be cheerful and joyful felt like added pressure. And in addition, many of them had wrestled with mental illnesses for long years, and those long years had led to fractured family relationships, to estrangements from parents, children, siblings. Christmas could be terribly lonely for them. For a lot of the clients at Partners, the stresses of day-to-day living was enough to make them feel weighed down and heavily burdened. And Christmas sometimes felt just like piling on. Now, when I did these faith and mental illness and the holidays presentations, I was always careful not to proselytize, but I was always quite transparent that I was there as a pastor. And in fact, a number of the clients had baggage, religious baggage, connected to their mental illness or connected to their estrangement from family, and they often wanted to talk about faith with me. Some of these discussions were quite a revelation for me, as I discovered that many of them were relieved to learn that the culture's obsession with Christmas was not only unbiblical, but it was not really a part of Christian tradition for much of history. I was enlightened to learn that many of them preferred Advent and its message to the actual message of Christmas. In most congregations, people are itching to get to Christmas. They warned me in seminary that if you don't start singing Christmas carols by the third Sunday in Advent, you're going to get yourself in trouble. But many of these clients at Partners would have been happy to just stay in Advent. I suspect they would have liked the passage we heard for this morning, although, as I said, it's a similar passage from one of the Gospels every year, the first Sunday of Advent. There are no angel annunciations. There's no impending birth. There's no talk of a manger. What we hear is of a different sort of coming, the coming of the Son of Man in glory, the second coming, some folks call it, the day when God finally sets all things right. When I talked with the people at Partners, the clients at Partners, about how Advent wasn't really about nonstop preparations for Christmas, not only were some relieved, they took the news as good news, as gospel good news. They expressed relief to know that Advent wasn't simply a run-up to Christmas, that it was about waiting for something that was promised but was still yet to come. And it was striking to see these people responding joyfully to that message of Advent. Our Advent gospel message takes place only days before Jesus' arrest and execution. As I mentioned earlier, Jesus has shortly before spoken of the magnificent Jerusalem temple being destroyed, not one stone left on another. The disciples, of course, know the timing, but Jesus warns them to ignore anyone that says they know the time. By the time we get to the verses we heard, Jesus seems to have shifted to speaking not about the temple anymore, but about the coming of God's reign, of God's new day. He speaks of that day in stock, apocalyptic images drawn from the Old Testament. They are strange and scary, yet Jesus says that when we see them, stand up and raise your heads, for your redemption is drawing near. Now, I'm not sure that many of us think of cosmic signs in the heavens and confusion and distress among the nations as being terribly good things. For me, they sound like those things that keep us up at night and make the stock market go down, that frighten us. But Jesus embraces them. Jesus seems unworried about such things. In fact, the things to be worried about, he said, are dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of this life. Those are the things that will weigh you down, he says. Now, I think I hear this word dissipation once every 3 years when this reading from Luke shows up. I have to look it up every time. I can't remember what it means. It means debauchery. And it goes kind of nicely with drinking, drunkenness. Add in the worries of this life, and you have some folks' Christmas holiday plans. A lot of stress and a lot of partying and drinking. Now, I always thought the partying and drinking was supposed to help you let go of the stress, but Jesus lumps it all together. Jesus, I think, looks at the world a lot differently than we modern folks do. We think that life is what we make of it. We tend to think of hope as people doing the right thing and helping fix what is wrong with the world. Hope is about progress and achievement and convincing enough people that there is a good way forward. And stress and worry and anxiety start to creep in when we become worried that there is not a clear way forward, that we're not sure what to do, that there are some scary people out in the world and in politics who may just make a huge mess of everything. Jesus understands that life can be hard and difficult. Jesus certainly expects us to do our part, to love neighbor, to work for justice and peace. But Jesus hopes. Jesus can hope because he puts that hope not in human effort or achievement. Jesus hopes and calls his followers to hope because he knows that nothing in the world, no one, no power, no evil, no anything can thwart God's plans from coming to be. Jesus can speak of hope and salvation even as he faces his own death, because Jesus knows with certainty that the future belongs to God. In precisely the same way, Martin Luther King Jr. could carry on in the face of opposition and of threats without succumbing to worry and fear, because he knew by faith that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. By faith, he knew that. What is it that gives you hope? That keeps you from being weighed down, that allows you to lift your heads high, even in the face of terror, economic uncertainty, health crises, the pressures of an overly competitive, overly consumerist, overly fear-driven society. For me, it is a faith sure that the days are coming when the nations shall beat their swords into plowshares and not learn war anymore. A faith sure that in life and in death, I and each of you belong to God. A faith sure that the future rests securely in the hands of the loving God we meet and know in the person of Jesus. Thanks be to God.